Welcome to My Business Matters, the Michigan Chamber podcast.
Hello, welcome to today's podcast. I'm Jim Holcomb, President and CEO of the Michigan Chamber, and your host today. In parts 1 and 2 of our legal reform series, we explored Michigan's legal climate, why it matters, how lawsuit abuse is driving up costs for employers, property owners, and families alike. Today, we move to a couple of specific policy solutions. In this episode, we're joined by state representatives who are sponsoring legislation to restore balance and sanity to Michigan's legal system. Together, we're going to break down these bills, talk about the issues, and why common sense reforms can help protect access to the courts while curbing abuse. So happy today to be joined by State Representative Mike Harris. He's of Michigan's 52nd District. That's portions of Oakland County. And he's the bill sponsor for House Bill 5281, tackling what's known as third-party litigation. And State Representative Jerry Nair, Michigan's 92nd District. He covers portions of Gratiot and Isabella counties. He's the bill sponsor of House Bill 4582. That's reinstating what's known as open and obvious. We have a lot of ground to cover, so we're just going to jump right in. Representatives, thanks so much for joining today. We appreciate it.
Love being here.
Thank you.
Certainly, lawsuit abuse, the court system, we see it more and more in today's environment. We see it in the news every day, whether it's federal or state level. Just kind of a basic question for you guys to get started. How did you get in to kind of delving into this issue area? And Representative Harris, we'll start with you.
Yeah, so, my bill deals with a third-party litigation funding. Mm-hmm. And, in my past life, I was a law enforcement officer, dealt with the courts for a long time. And, our courts are incredibly backed up with civil litigation. Some is very legit, right? And I think we've all probably seen it or had experience with legitimate cases. But there's so much that's illegitimate or I consider abusive, and it affects all of us. And actually, since I've been in office since 22, I still try and attend some intelligence briefings with law enforcement and whatnot. And it was very interesting. I went to one, and there were some federal agencies there, and they talked on the intelligence side, but they talked about some foreign influence in our court systems, right? And one of those things happened. Scary. It really is. And one of those things happened to be third-party litigation funding and being funded by countries of concern like China or Russia. And those countries specifically were brought up in this intelligence briefing. So that's what first turned me on to this. And then we had started working on some things. And then, we met with you folks and realized we were kind of working towards the same path. So we thought, why not make this a more collaborative effort to really accomplish what we need to on this?
Yeah, it certainly impacts everyone. I think all of us are impacted by the court system, whether you're in the court as a plaintiff or a litigant of any stature, or just you kind of are dealt the consequences, whether it's increased costs or a new standard or things like that. Representative Nair, how about you? How'd you just get into the issue in general? Then we'll get into the specifics of the bills.
Well, everybody's concerned about costs of insurance, and a couple of years ago, with the court ruling there in 23, they decided that the open and obvious doctrine, which basically said if it's slippery out because it's bad weather, or if it's the springtime and your parking lot gets a pothole or two in it there, that's sort of expected. Well, the court decided that open and obvious doctrine was just going to be a factor in it. So if you got the time and you want to hire a lawyer there, it opens it up for people to take you to court for almost anything. And there's also the issue with interior obvious issues there. So what that's not only resulted in is more load on the courts, but it's also resulted in much higher liability insurance that everybody from a retail business to a construction to any other business is going to be liable for any possible suit that somebody can think of to bring up to you now.
And that premises liability, that trickles down. That's just not impacting the business owner. That's going to be reflected in higher costs that they charge their customers, whether it's a product or service. Wondering, what's the reaction you've gotten now? Your bill, remind everyone of your bill is
4582.
4582 and dealing with. What's the reaction you get back in the district when you talk to constituents? Are they aware of this? Do they have concerns, or are they Because it's kind of minutia a little bit. When the Supreme Court's changing precedent and changing rulings, it doesn't really get to the front line very quickly.
Well, the general public's not too aware of it, but if you're having to pay for insurance, whether you're a retail business owner or just a contractor or somebody that's going to have some type of liability where the public's going to have access to you, that opens you up to anything possible. A slip and fall, somebody pulls something off the shelf and they get hit by it there, or an employee that's not paying attention how they're supposed to do their job because you didn't specifically tell them that doing a certain practice may hurt you. That opens yourself up to the business owner to some type of liability, and also landlords that are renting out these properties to various people.
And you mentioned insurance. I got to believe rates are going up pretty quickly because the insurance company has to model. They have to be actuarially sound, so they have to look and say, okay, what's the exposure, and then what would the cost be?
Exactly, and that discourages people from opening up businesses and exposing themselves to that. So you're deterring people from trying to open up their own businesses because they can't even open their doors because they can't afford the liability insurance.
Representative Harris, on third-party litigation, is this an area where somebody else comes in and they say, hey, we'll fund you and we want you to go sue somebody and just see if we can get to deep pockets? Or how did third-party litigation, if you could explain a little bit for our listeners, kind of what it is in basic terms and then why we're so concerned?
It's crazy, and when I talk about this, so many people will have no idea that this even goes on because there's no transparency in the state of Michigan with this, right? So third-party litigation. So if, let's say you're getting sued, a car wreck, what have you, right? The attorney that is the plaintiff they can work in conjunction with somebody that is wanting to invest in the lawsuit, invest in the outcome.
So the funders aren't people who have any say in the lawsuit at all.
They have zero standing in this case at all. Probably don't even know any of the people involved. May not even know the attorneys, right? But there's this push to have investment firms or sometimes other countries actually invest in our court system, and the foreign side of it, we've seen it involves getting information, investing and getting information in lawsuits so they can get, secret information, inside information, corporate espionage, if you will.
So if they invest in the lawsuit, then all of a sudden they may be privy to the discovery, and there could be intellectual property, there could be strategy, and there could be financial. So if they're investing in it, they get to see what our interrogatories, written responses, or depositions, and everything of that nature.
And to what degree, we don't know, right? We see maybe sometimes the ramifications of those things, but because there's no transparency, there's cases where even none of the parties are aware that this is going on, including the judge, because nothing has to be disclosed. It's honestly, it's mind-boggling, and that was one of the biggest things that shocked me as I started digging into this is nobody may know. It doesn't have to be disclosed. No parties in the case have to know about it. The judge doesn't have to know about it. And what's happening is these investors are pushing for these nuclear verdicts, right? So instead of maybe what might be a reasonable settlement, no, there's this huge push to go absolutely nuclear with it and make as much money as they can off of this.
Now, I'm an attorney. I practiced years ago, but I'm an attorney. I'm still an officer of the court. I'm trying to figure out the ethics behind this, where somebody comes to me and they say, hey, Jim, we want to invest in this, in your firm or this lawsuit, but you can't tell your clients. Who's making the decision about whether you settle or not? Is it the funder or is it the client? And it seems like there's a big problem there.
We require transparency in the political realm. We want transparency with judges, but we don't require it here. Again, it's mind-boggling, and so this is something we're going to try and fix here in the state of Michigan.
Are we seeing on either of these issues, whether it's premises liability or third-party litigation, is there a trend across the country? Are other states seeing kind of similar developments?
We're one of 9 states that doesn't use the open and obvious doctrine. So we're in the minority, and just simply driving up and down the road, you can see all the advertisements, if you're injured, if you're this, if you've been in an accident, call us, and those type of, that just tells you that this environment's ripe for anybody that's got it ripe. And these and these firms are sometimes set up on the basis that they're not necessarily hoping it goes to court. They're just hoping to get a good sized settlement out of the insurance company or the business owner there just to make it go away.
Yeah, I would assume their business model is the least amount of work for the biggest return, because then it's the profit margin. But what you're saying makes sense too, because I've noticed, and I'd be interested, you guys have to travel the state and you're back and forth to your districts. Certainly the explosion of billboards of lawyers out there advertising.
Yeah, I was just going to bring that up. I'm glad you hit on it. So, obviously, in police work, I did nothing but drive roads all the time, right? So, we got to see a lot of area. I also did PI work once I retired from the police department. So we did a lot in Southeast Michigan, all over the place. And the one thing that I have seen an evolution of is the expansion of billboard signs, and it's almost all of them are injury attorneys, right? Specialized injury firms. And what really has told me what Michigan's litigation climate is like is when we are now seeing some of the most well-known or large legal practices from out of state now moving into Michigan and purchasing billboards or advertisement, digital stuff, and it's all over the place.
Yeah. One of the interesting developments as we talk about this, I can recall recently too, is you see the law firms or the lawyers investing in name, image, and likeness of athletes and kind of connecting to universities or local foundations and communities to try to get some validity for what they're doing. I've seen several law firms that are sponsoring athletes now to try to make that connection with people.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely.
What do you think happens? What does success look like for each of your bills? Like, what's the outlook? Do you expect action in this legislative session of 2026? It's an election year, so things are a little more difficult sometimes.
House, I think we had a good chance of getting both bills through. Senate's a little less clear on it there. I just don't have a clear feel for it. That I'd like to say it gets at least taken up and considered, but I haven't gotten any indication from the governor's office of whether or not this is something that she's hungry for as well.
What do opponents say about your bill, about premises liability, open and obvious? If somebody says, "Hey, Representative, I disagree with you," why do they disagree? Did they share that?
Well, I think some of them feel that you're denying a person's day in court. Actually, I'd argue right now it's difficult to get in court with the backlog that that we're facing in the court with these frivolous lawsuits. This will help streamline it. The doctrine will be clear, and you won't be sitting there arguing whether or not, because it was snowy out, it was the business owner's fault that person slipped on a patch of slippery sidewalk out front.
Yeah, well, I would assume they get their day in court. It's just they don't have an easier run-up to it, that they actually have to look at the facts of a case, and determination is based upon that, not emotion or feeling bad that somebody fell and broke their leg or something.
That's exactly it. It puts some responsibility back on the person that's filing the lawsuit to show that they did the responsible things there, and as opposed to just making any excuse for them to take it to court. It puts some onus back on the person that's taking it to court.
Yeah.
And one of the biggest things and we saw it in police work on the criminal side, is it truly takes, because like I said, there are legitimate cases that go to court. I think this takes away from the validity of real victims, right? And, people that really need their day in court and have truly been victimized by a system or a situation, they're losing out in this battle because the abuse of the system it's caused them to be backlogged in court. Maybe they're not getting into court for a speedy trial. It affects true victims.
Yeah, exactly. Are there any, I know some people assert, Representative Nares, you were saying that maybe they aren't getting their day in court. Are there guardrails, are there processes in place to make sure that people can get to court with legitimate claims? Is there anything in your legislation that kind of addresses people who want to make criticisms of it in either of the issues?
Mine just simply reinstates it so that way we know what the guardrails are. Now, when an open and obvious is just a factor, it's not the main driver there. Any reason can come up in there and slow it down, and so you got to spend time in court. And those people that really do have a claim there are forced to sit or wait in line longer to get their day.
And with your issue, it was as I recall, it was a long-standing precedent here in Michigan, and the court overturned it. This wasn't legislative action. You didn't have legislators debating it, a governor signing a bill. This was a few people in a black robe who said, we want to do something a little different, and it seems dramatically different than what the rest of the country.
Yeah, and it was more of an emotional decision. It was based in fact, and that's the way the court ruled on it there. And until we get this legislative fix, it'll continue to be based more on emotion than fact.
And I think that's always unfortunate when we do make emotional decisions. It's easy to have the parade of sympathetic people that come out, and it doesn't move people. Everyone's empathetic. Nobody wants somebody to struggle or not get their day. But I think when we look and say, hey, we ought to just punish people, businesses have money, or this, the defendant has money, we'll just take the dollars.
Yep.
What about on third-party litigation? What do you foresee as the outlook for kind of trying to work on the issue and move it? Not every issue gets done quickly. It takes time, and you have to educate people. And a lot of times I assume you have to educate your colleagues on both sides of the aisle of why it's important and what you're trying to do.
Yeah, and honestly, other than one group, we really have not had much pushback on this, right? There is a huge group in the business community and the insurance community and citizens alike that want to see this happen. They believe in the transparency. They want to make sure that the system's not being abused, and they want transparency. They want to know what's going on, right? We have not banned the practice in this bill. So, people that are concerned about what this does, it has not banned the practice. What it's done, it's forcing disclosure of the practice. When somebody does finance a court case, you know about it.
Oh, so you aren't stopping it. It's just making sure people know about it, and
it's making it transparent. So we know, is there a conflict of interest in the investment, right? We believe the judge, of all people, should know that somebody's involved, right? And what if there is a conflict? Now, the only thing that we have banned is if there is a federal list of countries of concern that may play into foreign influence in our court systems, right? And we're not talking about our friends to the north in Canada. We're talking about, Iran, Russia, China, those groups. We have kept them in this bill from participating. But our friendly nations that we deal with all the time, this is still open to them to be able to do. And it makes sure all the parties are aware, and we have capped the amount of money they can make off of this.
Good. Yeah, it's still, we talk about it, it's still just amazing to me that I could hire an attorney and not know what his true motivations are, that there's no ethical restraint on him from taking on and doing the bidding of another party.
Correct. And it also makes it so the investor in the case can have no official impact on the outcome of the case. So they can't stop a settlement from happening just because it'll make them more money. Right? So they will have no impact in the case, as this is purely between the parties.
Yep. What are your, when you talk with your colleagues, what's the response like from your friends on the other side of the aisle?
Yeah, I think, my initial conversations were very good. And then when one of the groups in town that happens to represent some of the trial attorneys, it has dialed back some of the interest on the other side of the aisle, unfortunately. And the thing is, I have friends in the business. And there are many that are very supportive of this, but I think the association's been pushing back.
We've talked about your two issues just generally. Do you think there'll be much activity on legal reform in this legislative session? Are there other things that are percolating out there that you think our listeners should be aware of? Any other issues that really just kind of jump to mind? I know many times the committees deal with a lot of stuff. I didn't know if there's anything that you think the listeners should be aware of.
Yeah, I think, I'm fortunate enough to have Jerry on my insurance committee, but I chair the House Insurance Committee. And we have really driven home the fact that cost drivers are something that we need to truly be aware of when it comes to affordability here in Michigan. And this just happens to play into some of that, right? These types of things, they raise insurance costs. That gets passed along to the consumer. I also happen, luckily enough, to sit on the Judiciary Committee. So these are in the committee that I sit on. I don't chair that committee, but I love to have some impactful conversations and ask some questions, as we're vetting this process. So I see this being a huge piece of it. Again, like Rep. Nyer said, we truly don't know what to expect out of the Senate side of this. I believe the House, we will get this done.
Yeah. Talking to, much like Mike said there, they're very interested in trying to make things more affordable for everybody, and insurance is a big one. Whether you're talking medical and car insurance, liability insurance, that's all going through the roof. People want to see something done about it there. So we got good support on the other side of the aisle about doing practical steps like both of these bills do to bring things back under control in some type of reasonable way. We're not asking for the world. We're just asking for some common sense to be put in here.
Yeah, and you hope that common sense is kind of rules the day. As you said, it's all about affordability. It's about transparency. It's about making sure that people just aren't being taken advantage of, and it sounds like everybody can still get their day in court. If we're just talking about transparency, it seems like everybody should want that. If we want a stable legal climate, you have to have doctrines like open and obvious there to protect people, because those costs do trickle down. I think, once the public gets, they take a look at some of this a little more and they say, well, if my insurance rates are going to go up because of payouts, I may have an interest in something like this.
Yeah, and I don't think people look at kind of the big umbrella of how this affects their day-to-day cost in life, right? And whether they may say, well, I don't own a business. Well, you probably work for somebody who does, and that can impact benefits, that can impact all sorts of things that
your pay raise.
Yeah.
And those are all things people need to consider. It can affect how much a gallon of milk costs.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I know at the Michigan Chamber, we've recently joined. There's a new group out there for people who are listening, the Michigan Alliance for Legal Reform. You can get their information at miallianceforlegalreform.com. And so those are businesses that are coming together. This podcast goes across the entire state, not just in your districts. What would you suggest to people if they have an interest? How should they be communicating with their policymakers to make sure that their voice is heard? And Rep. Harris, we'll start with you.
Yeah, it's, sometimes people look at elected officials as somebody that you just can't reach out to. They're at a different level. We're not. We're parents, we're sons, we're daughters, we're business owners, we're working climate people. We want to be there and have interaction with people. And sometimes we don't know what we don't know, right? Yep. And if people aren't willing to reach out and share their insight or share problems that they're seeing, it's hard for us to make change. And so I would encourage anybody to reach out. You and I even talked yesterday. Most of us are not shy. I mean, God, give a politician a microphone, right? But listen, at the end of the day, don't think we're different than anybody else. We're really not. You elected us here to do a job. Call us, email us. It is not hard to reach out and talk to us.
Yep. And I've always, we have this interaction with both of you, but a lot of your colleagues on both sides of the aisle. It doesn't have to, you can disagree with an elected official. They want the information. I've always, been of the opinion, and everyone in your caucus and a lot of the Democrats that we work with, they're trying to get information, exactly what you said. Yeah. You know what you don't know, and sometimes you don't know what you don't know. But the only way to get that is to talk to people.
Yeah, and it's, and most of us are very reasonable, relaxed people, and
just trying to do your job.
And we can have adult conversations. So happy to hear it.
Yeah, Rep. Nyer, anything to add to that?
No, it's truly, we're sort of when you get up to upper level government, we're sort of the last link between Lansing and our homes or our districts there, and people need to know that they got the right to exercise that communication with us. We're accessible. We take calls daily from the district, answering questions. And a lot of people, sometimes they just need a direction to be pointed into, tell who to talk to. Yeah. Other times there are real issues that we need to take to the next level and work with other departments to get these people through the red tape that keeps on bogging down. But they need to let us know what's going on. I'm more than glad, my office is more than glad to take these calls and help these folks out and get them pointed in the right direction. We don't care who it is. We'll help. Our job is to help everybody and represent our district. So we're easy, just like Mike said, we're open and easy to talk to. But if you just make the assumption that we won't respond, you need to pick up that phone and talk to us. Don't make that assumption.
Yeah, I think it's incumbent upon all of us who are constituents of elected officials. It's our job as voters to engage.
Yes.
It's our job. It's not just that one day at the ballot box. It's throughout the year to share information, to give you feedback, both positive and constructive, and to say, this is what we expect of you, and this is what we're hoping you do. Because if all of us just sit on our hands and shut our voices down, nothing's going to change on any of the issues. We're so appreciative that you would come in today and talk about legal reform, but you're dealing with issues all across the board, from budgets to education to, public safety, permitting, and that's a big plate of issues that you're going to need us to help weigh in on.
And we're not experts in all of those.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, we're not experts in all those, right? If you want to talk about policing, I can probably talk about that all day. But if you want to talk about this little niche regulation type thing, I don't know. I need to talk to people like you guys. Yeah. And one other thing I'll encourage, if people belong to an association, talk to them.
Yes.
If you don't belong to an association that monitors things that are going on in Lansing or DC or what, join. It is so worth it. And you have other people there that are helping to fight the same fight that you want to battle. And, there's solid voices in Lansing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, as always, time goes by very quickly. A very special thanks to Representatives Harris and Ayer. Thank you for, like I said, what you do in your job as legislators, what you do in your communities, but also for taking up these important issues. Legal reform is impacting all of us, whether you're a job provider or a citizen, and we need people to debate these. So thank you for doing that. And thanks to all of you for listening. If you'd like more information on these type of issues, go to miallianceforlegalreform.com. You can always go to michamber.com for all things policy and politics here in Michigan. Until next time, we hope you'll get engaged, make your community stronger, make your voice heard.